Bitcoin is not what you think it is. It is not going to make the high returns that we have seen in the past. You are very likely overestimating what Bitcoin can do. Many people do. And that's why I don't like to only look at price data. In this video, we're going to look at 3 different price-related charts. So we're going to look at the logarithmic regression. We're going to look at moving averages or a delta of 2 moving averages. And then we're going to look at a long-term 4-year moving average. And all of those models tend to be breaking. They tend to be overestimating how high Bitcoin can go. So instead of just looking at price averages, we should actually look at on-chain metrics. Now, what's going on here? Let's first look at this chart, right? The Bitcoin rainbow chart as it is now being posted on blockchaincenter.net. And this looks like it actually encompasses the price movements relatively well, right? So this is a very long-term chart. It starts in 2010 all the way to today. And we simply just have a curved line here. And we see that the price tends to be bottoming at this blue line and it tends to be topping out at the red line. But once we look a bit closer, we notice that there is already some kind of overestimation of this slope in this chart. So look at this, right? We are already breaking out of this upper band at the very beginning, but we didn't hit the upper band in the recent bull run. So this would imply that maybe here at the end, the slope of this line should already be way flatter than it is drawn over here, right? So maybe it's not that reasonable to assume that Bitcoin will be between 250 and 340K in the next bull run in maybe 2026 or so, right? So this is one point. The second point is that this logarithmic regression has been adjusted downwards. The expectation has been adjusted downwards several times in the past. When you look just at the recent change, right? So this is the current version. When you look at the version before that, you can already see that this actually even broke out of the lower band. And we can also see that it was pretty far away from these top bands, right? So it peaked out already 2.5 bands or so before the top. This would imply that it's very likely that we are not going to reach these top bands here either. We are very likely going to simply top out earlier again because we have seen this overestimation time and time again. So don't just look at the price, don't just draw any kinds of logarithmic regressions. Rather look at, for example, what are the long-term holders doing? Are the long-term holders currently selling? For that, I've also got another video directly after this that discusses these on-chain metrics. Let's look at the next price-related tool. So the 2-year moving average multiplier. So we've got a 2-year moving average, that's this green line. And then we multiply or we shift this up basically on a logarithmic chart to find the tops, right? To try to determine where the top is. So the bottom here in theory is simply when we are below the 2-year moving average. The top is when you should be selling out whenever the price is above that moving average. What's the issue here, right? When we look very closely, maybe this is also overestimating how high Bitcoin can go. Because we see we have quite a bit of an overshoot in the very first bull run. Then this tends to go less and less with each bull run. The least bull run just barely touched it. So this would again imply that maybe in the next bull run we are not even going to touch that. So maybe we are not going up all the way to 170K. And this moving average is even now coming down. We can also see in the exact same chart that when we just look at how far is the price below those moving averages, that this is now the furthest it's ever been below the 2-year moving average. Never has been below that much. So there is some steam that's coming off of Bitcoin. There isn't as quick of a growth anymore, simply just in terms of time. We can see the exact same thing once we look at a longer term moving average, the 200-week moving average. So there used to be the saying in Bitcoin, right? If you buy Bitcoin and you simply just hold it over one cycle, so over 4 years, there's no chance that you can be losing money. And this is expressed by the price never being below the 4-year moving average or the 200-week moving average. But the price always bounced off that 200-week moving average. The 200-week moving average was the floor. You could always hold Bitcoin for at least 4 years, and then you would be in profit. This has changed. First time in history we are below this moving average for a prolonged period of time. We have come out of this again, but I'd argue, since the growth isn't that quick anymore, since it now might take longer than 4 years for Bitcoin to actually go in profits if you buy in really, really badly, that this might be the new norm, right? This might happen in the future again. So simply, Bitcoin isn't growing that quickly anymore. We can also see this in terms of number of active addresses, etc. We can see that now the growth mainly comes from the core believers that continue dollar cost averaging in. So it's the same kind of growth in terms of number of people that come in, right? It's not accelerating anymore, but the people that do come in now, they deploy more. And that's why the price over the long term increases. The people, they simply just hold onto Bitcoin for a longer period of time. And Bitcoin is now seen rather as an investment over the very, very long term than a short-term speculative vehicle. So it's important, in my opinion, not to overestimate what Bitcoin can do, to still be okay with the volatility. The volatility from top to bottom also went down slightly, right? These drops here were way more pronounced than the recent drop. This was a 90% drop. This is a 70% drop. So that is quite a bit of a difference, right? From 70 going down to 90 is another 80% down or so. So the volatility in both directions is now muted, which does make sense. Bitcoin is now way larger in terms of its market cap. So what do I personally do? I continue to hodl. I continue to dollar cost average in. I don't expect that high of a return, but that's fine because Bitcoin isn't as risky anymore. It's very unlikely that Bitcoin will be outlawed. Bitcoin is not going to get declared as a security, for example. So Bitcoin is safe. Bitcoin has a global network. You can always store your Bitcoin independent from governments. So this is the unique value proposition. You can move your wealth across jurisdictions. You do have your volatility, but over the long term, the inflation of Bitcoin is lower than that of fiat. And so you can store, if you can stomach the volatility, you can store your wealth in Bitcoin over the long term. And this is what the core believers do. And that's what I also believe. I don't think, though, that you can buy Bitcoin now and you can hold it for 5 years and suddenly make a 50x out of this anymore. These times are probably over. But it is still a good investment in the overall investment universe, right? If you have to decide, do I put my majority of wealth into stocks or into bonds or into gold or into Bitcoin? If I would have to pick one of them and it's maybe a 5-year time frame, I'd go with Bitcoin because there is still people coming in. Bitcoin is still the hardest of all of those investment vehicles. And there is volatility, but that's fine. The return, the expected return, in my opinion, is lower. It is being overestimated, but it is still higher compared to the alternatives that are currently out there. Now, in order to ride those waves still properly and to get a realistic view on when a potential top is being reached without using these logarithmic charts, I made a dedicated video just on that. That comes directly afterwards. Feel free to also join the Telegram and have a look at the premium membership as well. If you want to get some alpha beyond just holding Bitcoin, you want to generate some additional alpha, some additional return on your Bitcoin holdings, that's all explained in the premium membership. So looking forward to see you there and looking forward to see you in the next video to determine these tops over here. See you in that video. Bye-bye.